back into the morning show here on WCDT, and we have Common Sense Matters. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
How are you guys?
I'm good. Are you ready for me to say that I'm Betty Fraley?
We are ready.
And I'm here with Common Sense Matters. Have Nancy Silvertooth and Stephen Reynolds with me this morning. But to begin, I'd like to announce that there's going to be a debate this evening at 6:30 at the Annex, in the big meeting room at the Annex, and it will be Stephen Reynolds, Mariah Phillips, and Chris Hale. They're all running for Congress. So I would certainly invite all of you to come this evening at 6:30 and see these candidates and hear what they have to say. I also want to mention to you that the registration deadline for the August 2nd primary is July 3rd. Early voting is July 13th through the 28th, and Election Day is August 2nd. Now, the federal and state general election that will include these people you choose in this primary will be, the registration deadline is October 9th. Early voting is October 1st through November 1st. That's a long time. Is that right? That's what that's the information I had. And an election day is November 6th. But I do want to talk a little bit about the August 2nd election to inform you again, and I've said this before, but there will be two elections on that day. The other day, when I said that there will be two elections on August the 2nd, someone said to me, do I have to go twice?
Yeah.
No, you don't have to go twice. It will be a general election in which you will elect the sheriff and all the local offices. The other election on that day will be a state primary. That state primary will help you choose, or will have you choose, a Democratic governor to run against a Republican governor. Carl Dean and Carl Dean and Craig Fitzhugh will be the candidates for governor on the Democratic side. I think there are about 6 Republicans on the Republican side, but you also will have Phil Bredesen and Gary Davis on there running for Senate, the National Senate in Washington, to take Corker's place. And then you'll have, for the state representative, you'll have, for the Congress, you'll have Christopher Hale, Mariah Phillips, and Stephen Reynolds. And then Sharon Adams is running for state representative in the 39th district, and Scott Coffey is running in the 92nd district. Now remember, that's the part that we lost when we lost part of Franklin County. So this Coffey represents the southern part of Huntland, Key Springs, and Sherwood. So remember that. Also on that ballot, and my name will be the last name on the ballot, I'm Betty Fraley, and I'm running for committee woman. There's no money, no salary involved. It's just something that I enjoy doing, and I'd like to do it again. I am the incumbent. Also, Robin Smith is running for the male part of that seat. So, it is a call-in show. So if you have any questions about the election, be sure and get registered by July the 3rd so you can vote on August 2nd. And remember, early voting starts July 13th. That's just right around the corner. So, but the main thing is vote. Please vote. Do not lose that one right that you have. Please do vote. Okay, Nancy, what have you got?
Well, along the line of voting, Betty, I wanted to tell people about Go Vote Tennessee. It's a little smartphone app that's very handy. If you wonder sometimes what congressional district you're in. We're in Congressional District 4, by the way. That's what our Stephen Reynolds is running for, who's with us this morning. But if you'll get that little smartphone app, it's a little circle with blue inside and 3 little stars, and it says Go, like G-O, and then Vote, V-O-T-E, and then T-N. That is a handy little gadget. I'm looking at mine right now. You can put your name in there. Of course, to verify that you are still registered to vote. Then you can put voter information, districts. You have all these little options to choose. It'll tell you exactly where you vote, the precinct you vote in, the senatorial district, state senatorial district you're in, of course the representative district you're in, school board, all of it. That's go. A lot of us spend a lot of time with their smartphones. And if you don't have that handy little app, it has wonderful information for voting that you can just pull up by punching a few buttons. So I just wanted to mention how handy that is. And at this time, to stress one other thing that Betty mentioned, you have to be registered by July 3rd to vote in the August 2nd election. Sometimes we get asked, what if my voter rights have been, if I've been convicted of a felony and I've been purged because of that? The Tennessee legislature has made provisions for folks convicted of felonies to have their voting registration rights restored under certain conditions. And all you have to do really is just type in the little address in your computer there, restoration of voter rights in Tennessee, and it'll pull it up. But there are forms online that give what you do for different periods. For instance, prior to January 15th, 1973, if your conviction was before then, from January 15th, 73 to May the 17th, 81, different form. Then after 1981, it's all there. And, of course, you have to do certain things. Make sure your fine and costs are paid, all child support's caught up, get a form signed by the clerk of the court, probation officer, everybody that has to sign saying that you've done everything. But I just wanted to mention it is possible. The time is running short, but it's possible to get that done. Call me at 962-4982 if you have any questions. And that's later on I want to talk about David Stewart. I think Betty and I both do. But right now I'm going to give it back to Betty and Stephen Reynolds.
Well, I forgot to say that also that it's the county commission election on August 2nd in the local part. Now, David Stewart will be on the local election part, not on the state election part, but on the local election part. So be sure and vote for David Stewart for chancellor. And, Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, good morning, ladies. Good morning, Franklin County. It's great to be here this morning. It cooled off a little bit last night, but it's still pretty humid out there. We had some good storms up my way up in Rutherford County. But it's great to be back in Franklin County. We're looking forward to the debate this evening. It's been a long time since we've had a congressional debate in Franklin County, or the 4th Congressional District. So I think we'll have some good questions, and we've got good candidates, and so I'm looking forward to participating in democracy.
Well, what would you like to talk about today, Steve?
Well, there's a lot of things going on, Betty. There's a lot of gears turning, you know.
Now, this is a national office that Stephen's running for, so he is talking about national issues.
That's right. This is the federal office. It's currently been held by Congressman Desjardins for the last eight years. And there's a lot of things going, a lot of gears turning, Betty. We've got the Supreme Court decisions that have happened this week. We've got the tariffs and the economy that's going on. You know, just wherever you ladies want to go this morning, I'll be glad to talk about. The issue at the border and the immigration that's going on down there. I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like it, Betty. And Nancy, it's pretty disgraceful. But I think hopefully we're turning order out of chaos again. They've got a lot of chaos going on. I was fortunate when I was a young man in my career. I spent a lot of time on the Texas border, Arizona, New Mexico, California, and this is a very complicated issue. It's much more complicated than black and white, as most people, as the media would like to see it. You've got property owners with ranches on both sides of the borders. You've got families on both sides of the borders and communities. You know, I think that everyone can agree that we definitely need a secure border. that we definitely want to make sure we know who's coming into this country and that they don't intend to do harm to the citizens here. But that's really where we get off track, is in the process. And this all ties into our economy, and we are looking at what's called a demographic crunch right now. We're losing 10,000 workers a day to retirement because of the baby boom generation is retiring out, and we're not filling those jobs. And so immigration is an important part of that. The Congressional Budget Office projects that over the next 25 years we're going to continue to see a steep decline in workforce participation, and that's just because our generation is getting older, or the American generations are getting older. Germany's going through the same thing. France is going through the same thing. This is the post-World War II generation. And so we're going to have to adjust the way that we handle the future and our workforce in the future, and that ties back to this border issue and immigration and what's going on down there. And hopefully we're going to get all these children reunited with their parents, especially these folks that are seeking political asylum. A lot of folks don't realize these aren't Mexican nationals that are coming into the border. These are Central Americans. They're being ravaged by the drug war, the drug trade, and the drug cartels down there. They're basically fleeing for their life in most cases, and I think it's important that we recognize that. But I'll tell you, ladies, also when I think about these children and everything that's going on, I'm always reminded of the children here that don't get any media attention. We have, in these 16 counties, over 5,000 homeless school children in the 4th District of Tennessee.
Oh, man.
Half of those are in Rutherford County. And that's the best number that we can put our hand on, because it's difficult to get your hands on the numbers. But we know through the school system is how we can tell. And so we have a lot of children here in these 16 counties right here in Tennessee that are sleeping in hotels, that are sleeping in cars, and that are sleeping on friends' couches, and there are a lot of contributing factors that go into that. But while I know a lot of folks are upset about what's going on in the border, I don't think we should forget the children that we have right here.
When I really think about homeless people is in the wintertime, when I think about being just so cold and not having anywhere to go to get warm.
Right.
It is just a horrifying thought.
It is. That and hunger, too. You know, most of these folks are hungry, and that's why I'm a big champion of the child nutrition program. I think there are ways to fund this. I believe that every school-age child, we should provide at least 2 meals a day, too. And we live in a wealthy country. We have all of these farmers here that provide all of this food. So it's really just the willpower to make this happen. We have all of the resources that we need to make it happen. I want to champion having the willpower to make this happen.
Yeah. You might also want to address the tariffs. I'm back in the farming business again. I didn't mean to be, but I am. So I've been watching that because of the soybean people, the people who grow a lot of soybeans. The soybean price has gone down, I noticed.
It has. I think it's at a 60-year low now.
Yeah.
And so, I'll tell you, Betty, I met a retiring educator in Shelbyville recently, and he had been supplementing his teaching income with soybeans. He had about 150 acres, and so
that's a lot of soybeans.
That is. A lot of folks think about these big, giant corporate farms, and that's what comes to mind. But the truth is that the farmers here in Tennessee are our neighbors.
Yeah.
They're our teachers and businessmen.
Well, they're me.
And they're Betty. That's right. And so it's not these giant corporations that are doing the farming around here. It's our local citizens. And unfortunately, these tariffs, if they continue to go through, are going to have a devastating impact on our district in particular.
Yeah.
We're the home of not only all of these farmers, but we're the home of General Motors. We make Cadillacs in Spring Hill, if you can believe that.
Well, yeah.
And Nissan, Bridgestone, Jack Daniels. Over 50% of Jack Daniels sales are sold abroad. And all of this is going to impact them I've been studying this very closely as a business guy. I've imported steel and exported steel before, just through the course of my career. And one of the things that really struck me is the tariff on Canadian timber that's already in place right now. Now, there was a moratorium on that lasted for 10 years, and it expired in 2015, and Congress has not renegotiated that tariff. And so a new home in Franklin County cost about $8,000 more to build than it did 2 years ago, and that's all in the tariff on the wood from the Canadian lumber manufacturers. And so a lot of folks will say, well, $8,000 doesn't sound like a whole lot of money. Well, you compound $8,000 over a 30-year home loan and see how much that tariff is costing you.
Because you're paying interest on another $8,000.
That's exactly right. And let me say one other thing about this, Betty, about the tariffs that are going on. It's the President of the United States does not have the power to impose tariffs. He can't raise or lower taxes on his own. This is required by Congress. Now, there's one little loophole that they put in just a few years ago that said if there's national security issue, the President can limit the amount or impose tariffs on countries regarding national security issues. But however, I don't see Canada or anything Canada does or Mexico really as being a national security issue to our country, but yet we are imposing these tariffs and starting this trade war. And I implore our President to reverse course and to correct course before he does irreparable damage to our economy here. It will take years to climb out of this hole.
Yeah.
Betty, we have Calsonic leaving Bedford County right now, too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, they're moving to Mexico.
They've been there forever.
They've been there forever. They employ about 1,500 people in Bedford County. They're the second largest employer of the county. They make radiators, for those that don't know, primarily for Nissan, but I think also for General Motors. And I'll tell you what they want, Betty, and we want them to stay. I hope that
of course you want them to stay.
We hope that our leaders, state, local, we know the local leaders are working hard, and even federal. We hope that all of our leaders are working hard to keep them here. But they're asking for corporate welfare is really what they're asking for, Betty. They want about $8 million to build a new headquarters in Shelbyville in property tax abatements. And so when I talk about my plan for this district and for Tennessee, I want to create the environment here where we don't have to give away tax abatements or corporate welfare to these folks because they want to be here, because we have the employees that make a good living, because we have the infrastructure that can support their business, and because we have a community with hospitals and health care and bike paths and parks and all of the things that improve people's quality of life.
Natural resources that are so beautiful in Tennessee.
Of course, we're so fortunate here in Franklin County just to have the lake, And
of course, I just think Franklin County is the prettiest county in the
state.
I
I think that you can make a strong argument.
And I'm not a native Franklin Countian, but I just think it is the prettiest county in the state.
Yep. Well, it's not many places you get the mountains and the lakes, you know, like you get here. And I've been coming to Franklin County since probably the mid-'70s, and my father used to bring me down here, and we would go crappie fishing at Tim's Ford, and that was always a fun experience in the springtime. Yeah.
I believe you actually grew up in
Coffee County.
I did, just up the road.
Next door,
just up the road, maybe 25 minutes from here. I grew up in outside of Manchester on a farm, and of course.
What community, Steve?
That was called Summitville.
Oh, I know
there.
Summitville.
Yeah, it was Summitville, and my dad had beef cattle and corn, and then he was a miner, and my mother came from. My dad was originally from Bell Buckle and War Trace area in Bedford County. And then my mother was from Fourth Model, which is under Normandy Lake.
I know Fourth Model.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, of course, TVA has a dam there now. But TVA's in the news now.
Yes.
Where they're talking about
selling off.
Yeah, they want to sell off the transmission lines.
Yes.
And I would be.
What do you think that would do to us?
completely against that, Betty. It would raise the consumers' rates.
Absolutely.
Our power bills would go up. Our economic development and ability to attract industry to the Tennessee Valley would be inhibited by this. And so, you know, there are a lot of, like I said, there are a lot of issues out there that get thrown around. As a candidate, when I ran in 2016, it was pretty clear cut. We had about 3 or 4 platform issues that we talked about, and it was easy to stay on message. And now it seems like every day things that you never thought you'd talk about, you're talking about now.
Yeah. Looks like Nancy's about to bust to say something.
Yeah.
What is it, Nancy?
Oh, I'm just going to let folks know that if you have a question, call in 967-2201. We have Stephen Reynolds with us today on Common Sense Matters. Stephen is candidate for our congressman for the 4th Congressional District. That's the seat now held by Congressman Desjardins. So if you have a question for Stephen Reynolds, just call us at 967-2201 and do both. Come to the debate tonight at 6:30 at, is it the big conference room?
Yes.
At the Annex, Betty. You'll hear Stephen Reynolds, Mariah Phillips, and Christopher Hale.
Yes.
As they are the 3 Democratic candidates for Democratic, the 3 Democratic nominees for the congressional seat.
The reason Chris Hale's name doesn't come to us as readily is because Chris got in the contest a little bit late. But what?
The race.
Yeah, the race a little bit late.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, we have Chris Hale and Mariah Phillips and Stephen Reynolds.
Well, and I want to say this before I forget, ladies. Thank you to the Franklin County Democratic Party for putting on this debate. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and Chairman Bob Zimmerman has worked very hard to do this, and I appreciate this show here on Common Sense Matters. I mean, it's not every county that has a show every week that's dedicated to these issues, and so I just appreciate the opportunity to have our message heard out.
Well, we're just real glad to have you, Stephen.
Well, thanks, man.
Well, I'll just, once more, it's not only a right, but it's a responsibility. You heard Stephen Reynolds say there is so much going on now. It's something. It's almost as if every day when you think you're dealing with just about everything that you can, something else comes along, and you just need to learn all you can about the issues, about the different folks that are in office now, and voting makes a difference. The people that go to the polls and punch that little button, that can make a difference. So if you're unhappy with what's going on now, and you want to make a change, you can do that, but you got to make a little effort and start tonight by coming to that debate and listening and just being informed.
Elections have consequences.
Yes, and as we're seeing now with the Supreme Court ruling just recently on the unions, if I can dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, this is, I think the way the media has reported this and what actually happened are kind of 2 different things. But in a lot of these states, Tennessee, of course, is not a very union-friendly state, but no one is ever forced to join a union. If you go to work for a company, you don't have to pay the dues to be a part of the union. But what a lot of folks do when they don't join the union, they still realize the benefits.
Yes.
And so that's what this case was about. It was basically saying that folks don't realize that they don't have to pay for these services that the unions provide. So I think we've got
We have a call.
Yep.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
All right, how are you today? Do you have a question for these fine folks?
I do, please.
All right, well, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'd like to know, with the talk earlier about voting as a responsibility and a privilege and something we need to do, it seems that Stephen Reynolds never cast a vote until 2 years ago when he ran for office. I'd like to know why that was the first time he ever voted.
Well, there is some truth to that. I was apathetic for a while, so I'm not certain which voting records you've checked. I've been a resident of several counties since I've been an adult, But just like most of Tennesseans, 70% of Tennesseans right now are apathetic. And so I was in late 2015, when I started seeing a lot of my friends being deceived by what was going on, I decided to get involved in politics, and I believe that's what we want. We want people to get involved. That's exactly what I've done. So, yes, there has been a period where I was apathetic, just like most Tennesseans go through, and very busy, mind you. I was traveling all over the world, raising a family. I know it's no excuse, and so I'm trying to make up for that now. And I think that after running such a successful campaign in 2016, receiving more votes than any Democrat in the state of Tennessee, receiving more votes than our presidential nominee, and 43% in Rutherford County, I believe that I've more than made up for some of my past mistakes. So thank you for the call.
Okay, so you were, let's see, what were you talking about?
Well, we were talking about the unions there. Yeah, absolutely. And so what's happened with the unions is that people are having to pay for the services. They're not a member of the union, but they're receiving the benefits of the union. And so basically what happens is the Supreme Court said they don't have to pay for those services anymore. Now, we have a lot, unions, like I said, they're not very popular in Tennessee. We know that. But here's the thing. These are what unions have done for the people of our country. Weekends, overtime pay, holiday pay.
40-hour work week.
40-hour work week.
Minimum wage.
Minimum wage. There are so many benefits that the unions have provided to this country that we all benefit from now, and people can't imagine what life must have been like.
We take it for granted.
Of course we do. And so there's an important role for our unions to play, and anyone who is anti-union is anti-American worker.
Well, see, I didn't even know that TEA was a union. Mm-hmm. I thought I belonged to my professional organization, which it is. And then I got a call saying, you do belong to a union, don't you? Want me to go to the national convention? And I said, no. He said, well, you belong to TEA, don't you? And I said, yes. I didn't know it was a union.
Right, yeah. And so you think about all of those benefits that we've all benefited from. Workplace safety, Betty. I'm in the mining business and road construction business. I can tell you that my company now values safety over anything else. The most important thing, and to have that culture makes you feel good as an employee, because rather than, of course every company wants to be profitable and wants to make money, but our most important value is to make sure that our people go home safe to their family every night. And it used to not be like that.
No.
You think about it, there wasn't a lot of attention paid to our workers' safety. So there's so many benefits that go to the union. I believe that this Supreme Court decision will probably there will probably be some changes coming down the pipe for this. Like, once again, I don't know of any other industry or product or service in this country that's free. No. And that's basically what made this happen, was it made the service for free for the people who don't join the unions.
Yeah. Well, in talking about candidates, I would like to remind the people that Phil Bredesen played such a big part in helping my husband, George Fraley, get so many things for Franklin County when he was governor. So I want to remind you of that. The refurbishing of the square. He helped George secure a grant, and the grant now is sales tax money that would go to the state of Tennessee, but he has allowed that sales tax money from Winchester to come back to Winchester till 2022. So they have money coming from Phil Bredesen and George Fraley to refurbish the square that is our money, our tax money, that would go to the state of Tennessee, but it's coming back here until 2022. So Phil Bredesen helped George. Phil Bredesen said that when you see George Fraley coming, you just may as well have yes on your lips, because he's going to agitate you till you say yes. And Highway 64, just so many projects that he knows about Winchester. He knows about Franklin County. So I'm glad to be on the ballot with Phil Bredesen.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Betty, because Phil Bredesen has been out of the picture for a while. And to give Stephen couple of minutes to get his breath here. I said I wanted to talk about David Stewart. Wow.
Yeah.
From a nonpartisan view, Canon 4 of Rule 10 of the Tennessee Supreme Court rules say that a judge or candidate for judicial office shall not engage in political or campaign activity that is inconsistent with the independence, integrity, or impartiality of the judiciary. So, just to be extra special careful, I'm going to make this as a nonpartisan recommendation because I know David Stewart from having actually worked with him. Nobody knows a lawyer like a court clerk does. They do their filings with us. We see them in court. We see how they deal with their clients and other people. And I was your circuit court clerk during the time that David Stewart started practicing law. And I was honestly impressed with David from the very beginning, that he was smart, he was a lawyer who was on top of things, he was diligent in getting his pleadings filed and doing what he was supposed to do. And I was always glad to see David Stewart come in with something to file because I knew he'd have everything in order. We didn't need to question it. David is running for the position of chancellor, which is a judge. That's a position that's equivalent to our circuit judges, like Judge Perry was. On the organizational chart for courts in Tennessee, you would see on the same level the circuit judges and the chancellor. But Chancery Court is just a different court that set up years ago. Chancery Court hears only civil cases. Chancellor Jeff Stewart, David's father, has retired, and David is a candidate for that position. He is well qualified. He would make us an excellent chancellor from right here in Franklin County. We don't have a judge in Franklin County now. We were lucky for many years. We had Chancellor Jeff Stewart and Circuit Judge Buddy Perry. Circuit Judge Buddy Perry retired in 2014, I believe, at the end of his term. And by the way, Chancellor Jeff Stewart, of course, was still here, and he took over drug court that Judge Perry had been operating. So now, unless we elect David Stewart as our chancellor, Franklin County, I believe it's the biggest county in our 6-county district. I think we're bigger than Ray County. Ray would be next. Franklin County and Ray County at the other end are the biggest. Franklin Countyans, you must get out and vote for David Stewart. Take care of Franklin County. Get out and do what you need to do. I can vouch for, if you've got any questions at all about David Stewart, just call me and I can tell you anything you need to know about him.
You make a great point, Nancy, about the nonpartisanship of these roles of the justices and of the chancellors and all of that, and how important that is. And we just have to point south to Alabama to Roy Moore. And look at Roy Moore, and he was kicked off as the Supreme Court justice twice for unethical rulings and unethical behavior there as the Supreme Court justice of Alabama. And so I think it's important for them to remain neutral. I know they're human beings, and it's hard to not be partisan in the two-party system that we have, but I think it's really important to stress that.
I met Doug Jones, and I'm sure you did too.
I did.
At the 3-star dinner,
Yep.
And he was a very impressive speaker.
Yes.
He was our speaker at the 3-star dinner.
Absolutely. He's I saw him again yesterday. He's actually on an interview that I watched with him yesterday, and he is. I think I'm really proud of the people of Alabama.
Yeah.
Because they put someone up there with some common sense who's trying to bring levity to the situation in Washington, D.C. Doug, I steal a phrase from Doug Jones called kitchen table issues.
Yeah.
And I believe that's what the Democrats have to get back to, are kitchen table issues when talking about roads and schools and jobs And that's what our campaign has been talking about for 25 months now.
This program was almost named Kitchen Table Issues, and then we decided on Common Sense Matters.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. Yeah, it's so important because these are the things that impact everyone's lives,
Absolutely.
and it doesn't matter how you identify. But we have to bring these issues out so that we can have a good dialogue on what's happening in the world today.
That's right. Okay, what else do you need to cover?
Well, Betty, I'd like to talk about recently being endorsed by Demand Universal Health Care, which is a very large group, national group. I'm very proud of that. We didn't seek application from them. They came to me and said, we have researched you, and we want to endorse you. And so a lot of folks say, what's the first thing that you would do regarding health care? And let me just say this, Betty. The very first thing that needs to happen in Washington regarding health care is that the House and the Senate members need to be forced to divest their interest in pharmaceutical, medical device companies so that they get out of any opportunity to make any profits off of the healthcare industry. So I would want to sponsor a piece of legislation or co-sponsor a piece of legislation that would bar any member of the House or the Senate from buying interest into these companies. And I think until we do that, we're never going to move forward on how we straighten out our healthcare system, which we all know is a mess, which we all know the premiums continue to skyrocket on. I was fortunate to meet yesterday with a patient advocate, and there is literally a cottage industry springing up now for people to help folks navigate the healthcare system. They're literally paying other people to help them get through and get the benefits that they need, and it's just hard to believe that we've all seen our EOBs and things that come when we go to the doctor or have a procedure done, and it's like you need a Harvard law degree to decipher a lot of this, and it really shouldn't be that way.
That's right.
And just yesterday, I had a sample prescription given to me, and the doctor said, now, if this doesn't have any adverse effect, well, there's a prescription for you to get filled. So I called to fill it, and, of course, the person that I talked with is a former student of mine, so she researched it, called me back and said, Ms. Bailey, now your insurance won't pay for this.
Right.
And I said, well, how much is it going to cost out of pocket if I have to pay for it myself? She said, $500.
Right.
I said, I'll just keep the disease off. Thank you. I can't do
die,
that.
thank you.
Yeah, and you know, so unfortunately, a lot of people are having to make those choices when they're looking at the cost of the pharmaceutical products in particular. Insulin right now for diabetics has started to go through the roof, and
it's a necessity.
Of course, yes, and you know, suddenly it has a 600% price increase. I mean, these things, and of course our Medicare, we can't negotiate with the pharmaceuticals for Medicare. This whole idea about purchasing our prescription drugs for Canada, and of course we have a lot of people that promote that, but isn't it ridiculous that we have to promote that as a political idea?
That has to be a conversation even.
Yeah, that we have to go to Canada in order to get cheaper drugs. And so I'm bound and determined to do something about the healthcare industry, the health care for our citizens through a public option and universal insurance, universal single-payer option that I believe that all citizens could do. And if you look at it, it's the most economical way to do this, but it's also the moral way to do this. I was brought up in a Baptist church, Betty, and if we see a car, I ask folks all the time that say, it's all about me, and as long as I have insurance, I don't care about anybody else. And so the question that I ask them is, I said, well, if you're driving down Cowan Highway and you see a car that's flipped off the highway, do you stop and help people? Well, yes, of course I would stop and help someone that was injured. And so why would that care, or for someone who's injured or sick, why does it stop out there on the side of the highway? I believe that someone shows up to the hospital, it's just as important. We may not be there, we may not see that, but I try to use that example of saying, now, don't you care about those folks as well? And we have to find the most economical way to pay for this. We're going to pay for it either way.
Right.
we pay somehow.
Through the emergency room.
That's right. And so I think we should move to Medicare for all or a public option. Give people the opportunity. And people say, well, Steve, how would you pay for that? We have a plan to pay for that. It requires about 6% of an employer, for the folks that work, of an employer contribution, and about 2% from the employee. I can tell you, I've worked for big corporations, and they spend more than 6% providing and administering the health care to their employees. And if you go to businesses now and you were to say, hey, look, if all of your people got on a public option or got on public universal health care, and you didn't have to administer insurance through your company anymore, it would save a lot of companies and small businesses thousands, even millions of dollars, and that they would, hopefully reinvest in their employees in some other way, but it would remove that burden from our businesses. And so I think it's very pro-business to be for universal care. And I think that we're not going to do it overnight. We're not going to change the healthcare system in this country overnight, but we can start moving that way incrementally. And I believe that's where we're headed. Even though there's still a lot of resistance to that, I believe that's where we're going.
I do too.
Mm-hmm.
I do too.
Yep.
Okay, what else?
Well, just anything you want to talk about, Betty. There's a lot of things. Let me go back to the immigration thing, if y'all would like to. I hear a lot of folks come to me now and they say we need to get more Hispanic citizens involved and out to vote. And I'm going to tell you that because of the way that community is being handled right now, a lot of our Hispanic friends are afraid to go to the grocery store.
Yeah, I know.
And they're sure not going to show up and vote.
Yeah.
And even though they're citizens and have a right to do that. And so I want to encourage our people to participate, and that's very difficult. We have a large Hispanic population in Rutherford County. We have one in Bedford County and Warren County. I'm going to tell you that the Bedford County economy and the Warren County economy would collapse without a lot of our friends in the Hispanic community. And so I just feel for them because many are citizens and they have a right to get out and vote, but a lot of folks they're hiding. Let's just
yeah.
The simple truth is that part of our community is living in the shadows right now.
And policies that put ideology, things out there, political ideas ahead of actually caring for people don't come from Democrats usually.
Yeah.
I think of it because I was running for state rep. There's a part of, and I've said this before, there's a part of the state representatives, the General Assembly oath for both representatives and senators that say something about that they won't pass any act that is, just a little phrase that says that is harmful to persons.
Yes.
Always out there, and of course I found this. Of course, Betty's husband was a public servant, and she was too. She was right there by his side for years, and I was circuit court clerk for 24 years. And of course, you're faced with complying with the law.
Yes.
I mean, I was in the court system where there was lawyers and judges and laws and rules all around to abide by.
Right.
But there's always that contact with the person.
Yes.
And so I really, and you want to be consistent in what you do.
Of
you
course.
don't want to. I wanted to be consistent with. I was raised up in a very conservative Methodist church. In Baptist now, I've been in the Baptist church for years. But those conservative values, the photos of the big old pictures we'd see on the wall of our little Sunday school rooms of the good, of the story of the Good Samaritan, and Jesus, Matthew 25. Teaching us about taking care of the least of these.
Right.
All of these would be there, and there is a way to comply with the law, yet in dealing with people,
right,
have compassion, have understanding, and you can do that. And what is so lacking, we saw it, what looms large in my mind, and that I can't forget, is the way the Tennessee legislators did insure Tennessee.
Right.
They put their political And when you mentioned politicians doing something to prohibit politicians from taking money from medical, of course,
yes,
our Tennessee politicians that were being supported by certain rich people out there were afraid to do what they should do.
Oh, well, sure.
Couldn't have, I mean, we would talk to those folks face to face. Betty and I went to meetings and tell them, look, people are suffering and dying without insurance. They're having to go sit and,
right.
What was first to them was their ideology. Oh, big government, we don't want big government involved. We don't want to be getting that money from the federal government. What about the people?
Right.
What about these little children?
Yes.
That are being ripped from their
families.
Can't
yes.
you put that before your ideology, your politics?
That's
your,
right.
Your interest in just being elected again.
Yeah, and so
I see that, and people, when I'm asked how can you be a Christian and be a Democrat, I can't be anything else but a Democrat.
Yeah, right.
When I remember the teachings of Jesus,
yes,
which are with me, have been that 70-something years now. I can't see putting politics and agendas and ideology above the actual care and compassion for the person.
Okay, those people were elected. They're there to get reelected again.
Yeah.
They're not there to help
people. No.
And when that was not allowed to even come to the floor for a vote,
right,
is what just shocks me.
Right.
And they didn't relent. They would look you right in the eye and give all these reasons. It did no good to give examples of, look, these folks here, they're
right.
They would and that there's just something I'm going to say it again, you don't see Democrats
right
doing that.
No.
Right. And so that's where we have to transform politics. It's back to how do I get reelected instead of what is best for my community.
That's what just kills me.
And so when you throw that attitude in, listen, I don't believe politics should be a career. That's part of the problem.
No.
People should have a career and then serve the community in politics for a little while. By the way, I'm the only candidate to sign the term limit pledge. Now, some people agree with that, other people disagree with that, but I can tell you that I don't want to spend the rest of my life in Washington, D.C. I'm running for this seat to represent the people of Tennessee, but one day I want to come home.
Yeah.
This is my home. It's where I was born and raised. It's where they'll bury me, Nancy. And so I don't want to spend the rest of my life. And we need more of that. And a lot of that ties back to the money. You know, we're always talking about the money. Who's got this much money? Who's got that much money? And we know that money is the mother's milk of politics, and that it's required in order to get your name out. But when you look at what has happened to our democracy, from Russia to Riyadh, we have foreign adversaries influencing our republic. We have dark money coming in with no accountability influencing our republic. And so that's why I'm also a firm believer in publicly financed elections. I think for these 16 counties that I'm running in, about $100,000 ought to do you. And if you've got the energy, you can get out there and win on $100,000 because most folks that I know here in Winchester and in Franklin County, they want to look a candidate in the eye. They want to shake his hand. They don't want their mailbox filled up with trash and personal ugly stories about other candidates. They don't want to watch a television commercial every 30 seconds, and we know that all of those things are effective, but if the electorate, if the people that vote start saying, hey, look, I'm going to look at the candidates and the candidates that are willing to take the time to come out and meet me, shake my hand and look me in the eye and answer my questions no matter what they are, foreign or domestic, that's how we're going to transform this. That's why campaign finance reform is so important as well, because we look at why are people disengaged in Tennessee. They're disengaged because they say, well, it's all rigged, my vote doesn't matter. I've been there myself, and so we have to. The only way to be a change agent is to be a change agent.
Right. I can't imagine giving up, not going to vote. I had to wait till I was 21 to vote.
Right.
And I couldn't wait to vote the first time.
Yes, right. And participate.
I was already out of college and teaching school in Whitwell.
Yep.
And had to vote absentee, but I voted absentee and thrilled to death to get to.
Yes. absolutely. But it's so well stated what you said, Nancy, about caring for other people and about the rule of law. We're getting away from a lot of the rule of law right now.
Within, and of course, back to my circuit court clerk experience, of course, I loved it, and it was always a challenge for me, and I enjoyed it when people would come in with problems that we could help them with. I'd, of course, read the law, read the court rules and everything, and then do my best within the law and within the rules to help that person.
Right.
I'd push the envelope sometimes to help, and you can do that
sure.
without being lawless, without going rogue and within the law you can. But just to for our people in office, our politicians, the ones that make the laws, where you're going to be going in Congress,
right,
nationally, the ones that make the laws need to have the people, need to have the care of people at heart instead of who's going to be giving me the most money.
That's right. And how do I get reelected?
Am I going to get reelected?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I like your idea of go do your thing, and so when you leave there, you can know that you did your job.
That's right.
You didn't sell out to pharmaceutical companies
or whoever. And I won't
right.
sell the people of Tennessee out. Here's the thing that I know. When I go to Washington and I'm honest and transparent and accessible to the people of Tennessee and do the very best job I can, I'm not going to tell you that I can transform Washington as a single man out of 435 people. But what I will tell you is I can transform the way Washington works for the people that live in the 16 counties. They will have accessibility to their congressman. We have been terribly underrepresented in the last 8 years. And that's what I want to change, is to bring back the people of the 4th District representation. Back to this whole tariff issue. Congress is abdicating their role. They should stand up to the executive branch and say, you cannot impose tariffs on other countries. This is our role. But instead we hear nothing. We hear crickets. And they're all running for the hills now, too, if you've noticed.
I've said a million times, where are the adults in Washington?
That's right. That's right. And that's what it has to, a basic fundamental understanding of how our government is supposed to work and the willingness to stand up. You know, it's just like the Supreme Court decisions that came down recently. I may not like them, but they are the law of the land now.
Right.
And it will be my job as your congressman to uphold the law of the land.
That's right.
I may have a different opinion, but it's my job to uphold the law.
Now, I think I heard yesterday on the news that some federal judge has made a ruling that these parents and their child has to be reunited within 30 days.
30 days.
Now, how's that going to be enforced?
Well, that's going to be very interesting to see how that, I guess ultimately that leads to the Department of Homeland Security and the head of that agency, and who would be held responsible if this doesn't happen.
I cannot imagine having my 3-month-old child taken out of my arms forcefully.
Right.
Stephen, you mentioned something that just struck a chord, especially with me, and that is being accessible to the people you represent,
yes,
the 16 counties you represent. Back several years ago, when we started hearing the horror stories about mistreatment of veterans not getting treatment and being put off just for months and months and months and dying because they couldn't get treatment.
Right.
At some point, my mind went back to when I worked for Mr. Joe Bean many years ago, and Mr. Bean was involved in politics. He was very much involved.
Died
in
on
politics.
Election Day.
Died 1984, August 6th, I believe, or 4th, whichever. But anyway, he would, of course, in taking care of his clients and people, he just tried to take care of people. At my desk where I sat there out front, somebody would come in with a problem sometimes, and after a time I got to where I could write letters just about like he did. And he'd come in, and we would write many letters where he'd say, sit down here and tell Nancy what your problem is. She'll write to Congressman so-and-so. And he would write a letter to the congressman directly from him, probably somebody that he might have worked for out there, but and you'd get results.
Yes.
They would. How did we get to a place where veterans were not being taken care of
right.
up there.
Absolutely, Nancy, and it's not. It's all over, and so that's one of the things that I promise. Well, first off, Nancy, I'll have quarterly open town hall meetings. We'll have one right here in Winchester.
And you'll listen to me. It won't be a listening meeting where I have to listen
That's
to you.
exactly right, and I don't care what ideology people are. They'll all be invited.
Right.
I'm here to represent Republicans too, and independents as well.
Absolutely.
Once I'm elected, and I was honored to receive over 30,000 Republican votes, and that's one thing of why I believe I'm the candidate that can beat Scott Deschamps in November, is because I'm the candidate that has broad support. But back to accessibility, we will be accessible to the people and to our veterans. On my staff, I will have a Veterans Affairs expert. That's what their specialty is just to handle the veterans. We will have an immigration expert, and their specialty is to handle immigration issues. We will have a Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid expert on our staff, and that's it. So,
and an education expert.
And of course, Betty, and an education expert. And these are the people that will help me navigate the constituent issues when they're having a problem with the federal government. Back to your point, so when we receive a call or we receive a letter or somebody comes by one of our district offices, we will have the people that are able to take those cases on and to see what we can do to help and assist in those situations. A lot of folks don't realize that's one of the biggest roles of a congressman. Everyone thinks about legislation. And of course we've been in gridlock for about 10 years now, but the really important part is the role of interacting with the constituents here in Franklin County and being responsive to their needs from the federal government.
That would mean so much. And of course, on the state level, I've experienced going through helping people with TennCare and with insurance.
Yes.
Just went through with a young woman had a problem with TennCare, and of course, the paperwork, what you go through with the Tennessee TennCare Bureau is awful.
Mm-hmm.
They send out letters saying we did not receive the information that you sent us, and they did.
Yeah.
Later on, maybe you'll call them and they'll say, "Oh yeah, it shows that we got it here on a certain date." Oh well, it takes 45 days, and in the meantime, you've got a person without insurance.
Yeah.
It's awful, and there's nowhere to go.
Right, and no one to help.
And this is another one of the, I'm going to say it, heartless things that our Tennessee government, the Tennessee TennCare, and our Tennessee administration, the government did when Obamacare went into effect, is they laid off a whole bunch of
advocates,
advocates for people.
Patient
so
advocates.
They have nowhere to go. They can't go to the local office here and get help.
Now, wouldn't it be great,
it's
Nancy, if you just,
how
you have your Medicare card, and you go, wouldn't it be great if every citizen had a card like that, and they didn't have to navigate that? You're already dealing with a stressful situation of a family member, or being sick, or being in a car accident, or whatever it is, and then when you pile this on top of that, that's what really we should take off of people. I believe that it not only improves their health care, but improves their quality of life, too.
I want to remind you again about the deadline for registration to vote, July 3rd. Early voting is July 13th through the 28th. Election day is August 2nd. People, get out and vote. This is such an important election. And Stephen, I want you to do a wrap-up and ask them to vote for you.
Yes, well, that's what I'm going to do, Betty. I'm asking everyone out there in Franklin County and anyone listening today to go out and vote for me on August the 2nd. I'm asking you today for your vote. I'm a native Tennessean. I was born and raised here. I understand the culture and the people here, and I believe you've been severely misrepresented underrepresented in Washington, D.C. I make no bones about it. I want to bring home the bacon. So my name is Stephen Reynolds, and I'm asking you for your vote today.
All right, we have a caller.
Okay.
Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I just want to ask Mr. Reynolds to talk about some of the votes that Scott Deschamps has made against the people of Tennessee. And if you don't have time today, address it tonight. Thank you very much.
Do we have time?
Yeah. Have a great day. There's another caller.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let me just talk about one real fast that happened here in the district. We had a veterans home over in Bradley County. And Congressman, friends of mine, Republicans, put up 100 acres and $5 million of their own money to build a veterans home, and Congressman Desjardins voted against the funding for that veterans home. And then he took a victory lap on his .gov website, saying how happy he was because it passed anyway. And so now I'm burning a little bit of my powder for the fall, y'all. So, but I'll just give you a little preview of what's coming up for November. So there's all sorts of votes there that we're going to talk about when the time is right and once I'm your nominee.
All right, we have one more caller. All right, good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Thank you. This is Melissa Cruz calling. I just wanted to let Stephen know that I was listening to him and that thank you to cast your vote for Stephen Reynolds for Congress. If you're ready for change, he's the man.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the support, and we hope folks are seeing our signs go up around the 16 counties. We know they're popping up. We're going to put a few up today here in Franklin County, and we're looking forward to meeting more of the citizens here today. I'll be here in Winchester all day if you see me out.
And tonight, be sure and come to the debate.
I'll be there, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So you about to shut us down?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Well, thank y'all so much.
Anything else you need to say?
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity again, and it's important. This elections have consequences, and so I'm asking everybody to come out tonight, and we'll answer any question you've got, and we'll stay as long as we need to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right, you are listening to WCDT, AM 1340, W295, ABFM 106.9 in Winchester, and